Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today from many, many different corners of the world. It's great to see many people joining from all over many different countries. Thanks for joining us today for the briefing and Q&A for the Indo-Pacific Climate Tech 100. This initiative is led by HolonIQ in partnership with the Indo-Pacific Partnership for Prosperity, and it's really intended to spotlight the top 100 climate tech startups across the Indo-Pacific, as represented by the 14 member countries on the page in front of you. My name is Bethany Hogan. I'm the VP of Partnerships and Business Development at HolonIQ, and I'm joined by our co-CEO, Patrick Brothers. Hey, Patrick.
Hey, Beth. Great to be here.
Okay, so kicking off. So if you joined a HolonIQ webinar at any point, you know we work through quite a lot of information pretty quickly, but we definitely encourage you to drop questions in the question section of the webinar at any point during the conversation. So you don't need to wait until the end. You can add questions at any point that you have them, and we'll address them as we go. And we'll also, of course, reserve time for Q&A at the end. So we're going to start the session by talking about the IPEF Investor Forum, which is happening June 5th and 6th in Singapore. We're also going to share a bit more context about HolonIQ and all the different initiatives and research areas that we look at that are sort of sitting in the back end of this initiative. We're, of course, going to spend quite a bit of time on eligibility, so what makes an organization eligible for the list, and the criteria that we use to evaluate the top 100 and who should be featured in that. And then, as mentioned, of course, we will reserve time for Q&A, so do add questions as we go. So as I mentioned, this initiative really culminates in early June, on June 5th and 6th in Singapore with the Investor Forum. And Patrick, could you tell us a bit more about what that will include?
Awesome. Thanks so much, Beth. And so wonderful to see so many teams. I can see here, Beth, joining us, kind of companies in energy, the built environment, infrastructure, mobility. I see some circular economy teams, carbon markets. It's awesome to see so many, such diverse representation across climate tech, across the Indo-Pacific. Jumping into share a little bit more, as Beth had mentioned, the Climate Tech 100 really culminates at the IPEF Clean Economy Investor Forum, which is in June, as Beth mentioned, in Singapore, bringing together and connecting kind of 100 of the top climate tech companies in the region with 100 of the region's top investors in climate tech. Now, as Beth mentioned, 50 companies from the Climate Tech 100 will be invited in person to attend the IPEF Clean Economy Investor Forum. All 100 will be represented, and we'll be ensuring that all of those 100 investors will receive briefing packs on the Climate Tech 100. But 50 will be invited to attend in person, and it's going to be exciting. The annual, and this is the inaugural, IPEF Clean Economy Investor Forum, it's a really key initiative under the IPEF Clean Economy Agreement. You can find out more about that at the URL that you see there. The purpose of that agreement and of this forum is to really accelerate investment in climate technology and sustainable infrastructure across the 14 IPEF partners. 2024, which is the inaugural forum, is going to bring together the region's largest investors, and they really are some of the region's leading and largest, but focused across the whole continuum of climate tech. We're going to bring together startup entrepreneurs, projects across the regions. There'll be ministers from the 14 IPEF economies, government agencies and investors, and there'll be a lot. In fact, the focus is on matchmaking and on connecting investors with these opportunities. More details are going to be available soon. You should keep an eye out on the website here. There'll be keynote speeches, panel discussions, calls for more action and investment in climate technology. And as we mentioned, the forum is taking place in Singapore on 5 and 6. So the only way to be invited, of course, is to apply for the Indo-Pacific Climate Tech 100, which we're going to share a little bit more information about now.
Thanks, Patrick. Yeah, really looking forward to that conversations, and such a really incredible group of policymakers, decision makers, investors, and innovators. It will be really great. A bit about HolonIQ for those who are less familiar with us. So HolonIQ is the a leader in market data and insights, specifically on the climate tech ecosystem and the global impact economy. So we work with strategic partners and clients across really every spectrum of that ecosystem, governments and NGOs, economic development organizations, you name it. We work with a number of very large public global technology companies, but also growth stage and kind of rapidly scaling and expanding impact investors and finance partners across really every spectrum, from early stage venture capital, private equity, sovereign wealth funds, a number of players that are really driving the capital of innovation in climate tech. Universities are a massive partner to us, both from the research side, but also thinking about future of work in climate tech and where our world is going. And yeah, I would say it's a really representative combination of those who are shaping policy and future technology and sort of how customers engage with different kinds of products, research and investment. And I think, I should also mention, so that's a bit about us and who we tend to work with. And I think this slide really well represents some of the initiatives that we put out into the world, the research and analysis that we do. So we produce quite a lot of open source sort of insights and trend analysis that help organizations understand the climate tech ecosystem and where it's going. Foundationally, we've developed a climate tech taxonomy that actually we iterate every year as the market changes, and that's available. I'm going to drop that in our link here, but it's an open source resource that really helps organizations understand the full ecosystem. We also lead an annual list, which we call the Climate Tech 1000, which this Climate Tech 100, of course, is really a strong kind of has a connection to and a legacy to. So that's us highlighting globally the most promising climate tech, 1,000 climate tech companies across the world with cohorts in every region. And we also do quite a lot to convene and connect decision makers and innovators in the space through leadership summits. But what I'm really excited about, and I think is one of the really great things about the Indo-Pacific Climate Tech 100, is it really brings a lot of that together, right? It really bridges nicely from the Climate Tech 1000 we do every year. As you can see in the visual here, it's really linking well to the taxonomy and how we map the ecosystem on a really macro as well as very granular level. And as mentioned about the investor forum, it really brings together individuals to help actually drive and scale these really important innovations. Patrick, anything you wanted to add here?
No, I just can't wait to deep dive into these 14 markets and learn more about some of the teams who are really driving us to a more sustainable future. So it's great to have a head start with the Climate Tech 1000, but there's nothing like an opportunity to deep dive and learn more about the teams that I can see here kind of joined us today, kind of really leading the charge for the Indo-Pacific.
Absolutely. Okay, let's get down to brass tacks a bit. So let's talk about eligibility. I'll start with that. Patrick can add in, and then he can take us through criteria. So we get asked a lot, right? What is defined as climate tech? What is defined as a startup, right? A lot of these definitions have really different contexts for different organizations, different markets, different geographies. And so we've really intentionally tried to represent that we understand that in different spaces and stages and ecosystems, they might have slightly different things. And we want the eligibility to be something that's accessible and helps capture the broadest range of organizations that really should be featured as representing our net zero future. So age is one of the easiest ones, need to be founded in or after 2010. Geography, so the real focus here is having a significant market focus and or team based in one of the Indo-Pacific economies. So these 14 here basically is your team headquartered here, or is the majority of your operations, your market in one of these 14 countries? Scope, so climate tech also, we do sometimes get asked, what is climate tech and does this one thing fit into it and how about another? So as mentioned, we're going to include the global climate tech landscape in this chat. That's a really good overview of the full sort of container that we're talking about. But the scope we're including here is basically following what we would consider sort of a subsector level, which includes renewables, alternative energy and resources, energy storage and distribution, biosphere, natural capital, agriculture and food, circular economy, carbon markets, climate data and finance, decarbonizing the built environment and mobility. And of course, as we're going, if you have any questions about sort of when you say climate data and finance, do you mean this or that, right? There's storage, there's offsetting, but there's also the technologies that drive that, administration and the infrastructure within that. So anyway, if you have questions like that, we can go through today as well. And then a really important eligibility piece is control. And the simplest way to put this is pre-exit, right? So a startup that does not have controlling external partners has not been acquired and has not yet been exited. We've also been asked, does this include projects or initiatives within a bigger parent company? No, we're looking at startups whose sort of core offering is that technology. Patrick, want to take us through criteria?
Yeah, thanks, Beth. So as Beth mentioned, they're really the eligibility areas that qualify a company for the Indo-Pacific Climate Tech 100. Once we've established the organizations who have qualified, then we go through an evaluation process across 5 dimensions. Those dimensions are market, product, team, momentum, and maturity. So essentially, every organization is scored on a 10-point scale across each of these areas by experts across the region and in industry disciplines. In the market area, we're looking at the size, the quality, and the relative attractiveness of the climate technology market that the company is operating in. That's not the economy. That's not the GDP of the country, for example. That's the global market of the area that they might be operating. That might be solar, it might be circular economy, it might be textiles, it might be nuclear, it could be the built environment, it could be electric vehicles, EV charging, be all sorts of forms of climate technology. And we're looking at how attractive that market is globally for that organization. On the product dimension, we're looking at the quality and uniqueness of the product and its service, demonstrated impact, fit, customer demand. On the team side, we're looking for diversity. We're looking for expertise. We're looking for depth. We're looking for demonstration from a team capability perspective to be able to compete and deliver on this capability. On the momentum side, we're looking for positive and continuous changes in size, scale, velocity, all sorts of forms of signals that the company is building and maintaining momentum. And then finally, for maturity, we're looking for organizations that have demonstrated impact. There is certainly a bias in this process towards organizations that are moving from experimentation to scale. Now, that varies significantly across the Indo-Pacific, but in general, that's what the maturity dimension is trying to assess. We'll look at all of these 5 factors. They are weighted equally, and this process helps us determine the Indo-Pacific Climate Tech 100. We're already getting some questions, which is fantastic. If you have any more questions as we're working through the evaluation criteria, please share them and we'll do our best to respond to those as we make our way through here. Beth has just responded, for example, to a question which was around carbon markets, which is actually very explicitly covered as part of our scope to the climate tech landscape. If you Google HolonIQ climate tech landscape, you will get a copy of 50 different categories which identify the scope of climate technology and really answer the question, what is climate technology as well? So carbon markets is absolutely part of that process as we think of carbon markets from a financial perspective, but also other economic perspectives as well. So carbon markets is in, you should apply. I'm going to keep going, Beth, just as more questions are coming in here. So how will we build the 100? So we have a couple of criteria that are guiding us in the formation of selecting 100 companies across the Indo-Pacific. The first is that every member country of IPEF will be represented by a minimum of 3 companies. So of the 14 countries who are members of IPEF, we expect each country to be represented by 3 companies who are headquartered or where the company is predominantly operating and powering climate technology in that country as well. The second criteria for that 100 that we're applying is to ensure that we see diversity. So the top 10 from each of 3 thematics will also be included in that 100. And those 3 thematics are energy, the environment, and mobility. So for example, carbon markets, as we've been talking about in Q&A, would be included in the environment. That could be everything from precision agriculture and smart farming in the food system, all the way through to circular economy, as we mentioned. Solid and waste water comes to mind. Infrastructure, it could be design and construction, it could be sustainable materials, through to mobility, which could be everything from electric aircraft to micro mobility, new forms of rail and air and sea mobility as well. So really making sure that we've got geographic diversity across the Indo-Pacific, but also thematic diversity and sector diversity as well.
Wonderful. So a little bit more about how to apply. So you, of course, can use this QR code right here. And if you simply Google Indo-Pacific Climate Tech 100, the first thing you'll see is the overview page. The overview page includes all of our eligibility and criteria that we went through, more information about the partners involved, all of the countries that are included in IPEF and will be represented in this list, a little bit more about the investor forum, excuse me. And again, the link to the application, which you can go straight through. It's a short application, pretty straightforward. And then from there, we're really looking forward to seeing what comes in, what companies put themselves forward. And we're just, we're starting to already see some really amazing ones, quite a big volume, but we're really looking forward to seeing more as it progresses. We had a question coming in, which is a pretty straightforward one, which is, what's the last day that we can apply? Mm-hmm. And Friday, April 26th is the last day for applications. So definitely do head over to that website to submit. And you have until April 26th to do so.
I'm picking up another one, Beth, around whether you can apply on behalf of the company. Absolutely. The application form is not too detailed. If you're an investor, if you're a customer, if you have a connection with a company, if you are an ecosystem support enabler as well, you can nominate a company. So please feel free to complete an application. That helps just to ensure that we have identified every climate tech company across the Indo-Pacific and are assessing them. Our team will actually reach out to companies if we haven't heard from the company themselves. Once a company is nominated, we'll reach out to that company and we'll invite them to complete a full application to ensure we have the best and most recent information as part of the evaluation process.
That's great. I got another question about a date question. So when will the 100 be announced? Do you want to take that, Patrick?
Yeah. So applications close on April 26th. We're expecting to announce the Indo-Pacific Climate Tech 100 early May. That is, of course, so that subsequent to announcing the 100 and celebrating that 100, that will be a really, really exciting milestone. Invitations will be extended following that point for the 50 companies to attend the investor forum in Singapore and give those companies time to get organized as well. So April 26th, that gives us about a week. I mean, as Beth mentioned, we're already seeing companies apply. We are evaluating companies on a rolling basis as well. So encourage you to get your application in as soon as possible, even though I know it's tempting to wait until the last minute. But the sooner your application is submitted, the sooner HolonIQ and the team can ask any questions that might assist in the process as well. So please don't wait. I know many of you will, but best to get your application. It's a very, very simple process that only takes a few minutes. The sooner the better.
That's such a good point. It doesn't just make our lives slightly easier, but it also means that we're able to run comms with you earlier. And that same logic applies for nominations, of course. So if you have anybody you'd like to nominate, please, we encourage you to do so as soon as possible. We had another question that just came through saying, I'd like to know more about the investor meeting for the shortlisted 100 companies, which is a great question. And I know some folks are also probably wondering who's going to be in this room and what's it all about. I can start at a high level, and then Patrick, if you want to add more details. So yeah, this is really intended to be all about exposure, deployment, and scale of really leading climate technologies that are going to be at the forefront of a net zero future for the Indo-Pacific, which is, of course, a hugely, hugely important market for climate tech innovation. So there's a lot happening, right? This is an important market. These are really important technologies, and we want everybody in the room to be, it is designed such that everybody in the room is really all about enabling sort of growth and development of those technologies. So there will be policymakers and decision makers at a government level who are helpful in understanding how to tap into markets and gain the greatest exposure. There are investors who are really on the lookout for better awareness about some markets that maybe aren't as on their radar, or some thematics, which is both are really big parts of why the diversity of different types of thematics and geographies are really important to how we're featuring the list. We're going to have, very large firms like KKR and Tata in the room, who are part of the Indo-Pacific Partnership for Prosperity. And we're structuring it such that it's not just really a high-level meet and greet, but that there will be private meetings and opportunities to really dive deep into opportunities for partnership.
Yeah, I think about there kind of being three layers to this process. One is, HolonIQ intends to prepare a public document to share globally on the 100 that provides, a brief profile on each of the 100 companies, with segmentation by geography and by thematic as well. That's a pretty significant opportunity for that kind of level of exposure and distribution globally in the first instance. The second layer, as Beth mentioned, is really kind of getting the attention of 14 governments, 100 investors, and associated agencies that will be part of the investor forum. Again, there's a very, very significant opportunity to jump all the way to the front of the queue and be identified as one of the top 100 climate tech companies in the Indo-Pacific, with governments across the region taking a very serious kind of approach to this, as well as investors too. And kind of that last layer, which Beth talked about, is that one-on-one time. So on the afternoon of the 6th of June, HolonIQ will be facilitating that process of connecting in person the companies who are invited to attend with all of the investors. We'll be taking a very hands-on approach to that, matching companies with investors who are focused on those specific areas. As Beth mentioned, we want every company to get as much exposure as it can during that time, but also make time for one-on-one meetings. Kind of, KPI for us is for, many deals to be closed as a consequence of this meeting. So it's a very serious opportunity. We're really excited about what might come of bringing so many fantastic climate tech companies together with so many leading investors. But we'll be sharing more. Keep an eye out on the IPEF Clean Economy Investor Forum website, and we'll be announcing more early May when we announce the 100 about this process as well.
Fantastic. I think we have time for one more quick question. We had one really interesting one, which was, how does the Indo-Pacific Climate Tech 100 fit into or relate to the Climate Tech 1000 that was mentioned earlier? Patrick, do you want to start us off with that?
Yeah, so great question. As Beth mentioned, key to HolonIQ's annual cycle is identifying the top 1,000 climate tech companies around the world. And we do that by region, which is why we're so excited, the Indo-Pacific Climate Tech 100. It intersects with our North America Climate Tech 200, our Oceania Climate Tech 100, our South Asia Climate Tech 100, our Southeast Asia Climate Tech 50, and our East Asia Climate Tech series as well. So it really is so wonderful to have an initiative that crosses across so many of our annual processes about identifying top climate tech. All of those are really on hold until we clear through this process of identifying the Indo-Pacific Climate Tech 100. Companies who apply for the Indo-Pacific Climate Tech 100 will automatically be considered as part of our Global Climate Tech 1000. We're really leading with this process, given how significant the recognition and the connectivity will be for the companies who are recognized as part of this process. But the Global Climate Tech 1000, as we do every year, but more so this year, after Singapore, HolonIQ will be holding our climate tech kind of ecosystem connectivity processes in New York, where we're based out of the Climate Week in New York, and we'll be bringing together the Climate Tech 1000 with the Indo-Pacific Climate Tech 100 as well. It's during the week of the UN General Assembly, so I dare say all 14 countries who are members of IPEF will be represented there that week, and we really hope to kind of follow on from the connectivity in Singapore and kind of continue that process. So lots of connectivity, but this year we really are leading with the Indo-Pacific Climate Tech 100.
Excellent. Okay, I think those were all of our questions. Yep.
Right on time.
They were great questions. So thank you everybody for contributing them and for joining us from so many different parts of the Indo-Pacific. It's really wonderful to have such a global and thematically diverse audience here as well.
I think if you've got any questions, please don't hesitate to email hello or help at holoniq.com. Our team is on standby. As Beth had mentioned, Google Indo-Pacific Climate Tech 100. You will find us if you've got your phone with you. Now you can scan the QR code. Look forward to your questions. Look forward to discovering many more fantastic companies leading a more sustainable future for us all across the Indo-Pacific and around the world.
And remember that April 26th close date for applications and nominations, but the earlier the better. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a good one.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.